I appreciate you joining me today. We're going to be looking at an individual named Epaphroditus today. Our hymn is a hymn called Sunlight. It's an older hymn.
I've wandered in the shades of night till Jesus came to me, and with the sunlight of his love bid all my darkness flee. Sunlight, sunlight in my soul today, yes, sunlight, sunlight all along the way. Since the Savior found me, took away my sin, I have had the sunlight of his love within.
Okay. As I said, the account comes from Philippians, and we'll read the main portion, and then in the conclusionary remarks he is mentioned once again. Philippians chapter 2, one of the things he's speaking about, let me back up a little bit. He talks about what he's planning to do, and he hoped to send Timothy to the Philippians, and it speaks well of Timothy here. Excuse me. And then he says he also would like to come to them shortly, verse 24. Verse 25, yet I considered it necessary to send to you Epaphroditus, my brother, fellow worker and fellow soldier, but your messenger and the one who ministered to my need, since he was longing for you all and was distressed because you had heard that he was sick. For indeed he was sick, almost unto death, but God had mercy on him, and not only on him, but on me also, lest I should have sorrow upon sorrow. Therefore I sent him the more eagerly, that when you see him you may rejoice, and I may be less sorrowful. Receive him therefore in the Lord with all gladness. Hold such men in esteem, because for the work of Christ he came close to death, not regarding his life to supply what was lacking in your service toward me. As I said, when you come over to chapter 4, and you have, as it says, the exhortation, encouragement, and prayer, and talks about some folks who are having some trouble in the congregation. And then he talks about how the Philippians were able to support him once again, that they had that ability. And then in verse 17 he says, not that I seek the gift, but I seek the fruit that abounds to your account. Indeed, I have all and abound. I am full, having received from Epaphroditus the things sent from you, a sweet-smelling aroma, an acceptable sacrifice, well-pleasing to God. So they had sent gift to Paul, had sent help to Paul, and Epaphroditus had been the deliverer of that. So what can we say about Epaphroditus then? One is, he was trustworthy. He was trusted to deliver what they had for Paul. And not everybody is trustworthy. I believe there's Proverbs that speaks about, the lazy man, and if you send him, it's like, it seems like it talks about smoke and vinegar. Namely, that it just stings. You end up being stung by it because you are entrusting something to someone who's not trustworthy. Well, Epaphroditus was trustworthy. He was faithful. That's the first thing we wanted to mention, but then we also wanted to mention, to back up to chapter 2 in the body of the text, we might also think about how he was sacrificial, and that Paul uses this language that for the work of Christ he came close to death, there in verse 30. Now he talks about the sickness. So what does that mean Epaphroditus had done? Does that mean he came close to death? Does that mean he was pushing himself and his health was just failing on him? Was it sickness or was it something else? We're in Rome, and so you might think about how it may have been dangerous to seek out Paul, perhaps. Things along those lines. Not real sure, other than what Paul says here, that he came close to death, not regarding his life. And so we think about taking up our cross daily and denying ourselves for others. And that's what Epaphroditus had done. He was trustworthy, and he goes on this great journey from Philippi to Rome, and now Paul is sending him back with this letter in hand, by the way. He's trusted, and he's sacrificial. He's looking out for others' interests ahead of his own. And that's, you might look a little bit earlier when Here he was, he's sick, and yet he's distressed because they had heard he was sick. He's what is he doing? He's thinking about Paul. He wants to help Paul, and he's thinking about his brethren back home, back in Philippi, and he wants to help them, and he's putting their interests ahead of his own, and it's killing him. That's odd, isn't it? He's pushing himself. He's sacrificing himself, and he's sick, and Paul, I'm sure, had been praying for him, and the Lord had granted him mercy. And Paul does not have sorrow compounded upon sorrow, he says. And so his health is recovered, and now he's able to go back because they're concerned about him. And that's our last point today. He was missed when he was gone. Paul says, I considered it necessary to send him to you, my brother, my fellow worker, my fellow soldier, but your messenger and the one who ministered to my need. Paul would have loved to have kept him. He said earlier in talking about Timothy, I have no one else who's like-minded. Okay, his co-workers, his co-soldiers, what's that list? His co-workers, his co-soldiers, his brother. Okay? Paul would have loved to have retained him and kept him there. But Paul's willing to send him back. And I'm sure Paul missed him when he was gone, just as the Philippians missed him when he was gone. And what a wonderful thing it is to be missed when you're gone. It is a sobering thought and a sad thought. If you think about if you're not there and you're not missed, and just something is amiss. It may be a lack of appreciation. It may be a lack on their part. It may be a lack of influence and effect and goodness on your part. Hopefully we're missed when we're gone, whether it's temporary or whether it's with our passing. Epaphroditus was missed, and in that's a good thing. Appreciate you. Hope you have a good day. Join us tomorrow for another portion of our daily praise.